Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pure Ambition Podcast. Today, we welcome on Sam Scaffidi. Sam is the founder and head coach of Project Sweat and Project Sweat Run Club. She's a 3-hour and 49-second marathoner. Yes, it pains me to hear that just as much as it pained her to say that. She's helped hundreds of runners set PRs, run pain-free, and fall in love with the sport of running. In this episode, Sam and I do a deep dive into the sport of running and the key elements to focus on to enhance performance and longevity. In this episode, you're going to pick up tips for faster recovery after a race, what you can do when dealing with an injury, why you should be eating before a run and what you should be eating, the ideal frequency for strength training as a runner, how to include marathon paces into your long runs, signs of overtraining and how to avoid it, and we even do a mock 12-week marathon build and what that should look like. This episode is packed full of value. Even though I can't run right now, I continue to love to learn from people like Sam, and I know you guys are going to walk away with takeaways that you can apply to your life today and improve as a runner. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow, reach more people, so that we can get closer to our mission of inspiring and empowering 100 million people to become the happiest, healthiest, most fulfilled version of themselves. Love you guys. Now let's dive into it with Sam. What was the most recent race that you ran? And do you have any new ones, up and coming ones on the schedule?
So I ran Grandma's in Duluth, Minnesota back in June. Probably a little silly of me to choose to do so. I've been dealing with some pretty serious injuries that have just been nagging for a long time since like last October, and decided to just fun run it. So it was a very fun run, but I don't think it helped my case. And now I took 6 weeks off entirely, which was very challenging, as I'm sure you can relate to, not being able to run at all and just spending all my time in the gym instead. And I am signed up for New York City, but I'm planning on just fun running that. And then we signed up, a couple people in my run club signed up for a 50 miler in May of 2024.
Epic. Okay. What do you think is the, time period runners should be taking off after a marathon? I know there's context too, because some people, they're just using it as like a tune-up race. My buddy Matt Choi, he's just running a marathon every month. So like he's not trying to set any PRs or anything right there. But this is something I dove into with Jason a couple weeks ago on a podcast, Jason Fitzgerald. And we're kind of talking about like, there's so many marathoners who, maybe they don't set their PR and it's like, all right, well, there's another one in a couple weeks and I'll just go run that, and you really don't give your body, mind, spirit, energy, the time to recover. So when you're working with, let's just say, your average runner, like they want to do maybe a couple marathons each year, what's kind of a good cadence for them when thinking about that?
I think 2 weeks completely off, no matter what. Beginners, I mean, even it's hard for those of us that are a little bit more experienced to take 2 full weeks off, but I think you got to give yourself at least 2 weeks and then decide, am I ready to do this? Do I want to do this? Am I itching to do this? And start super easy, maybe in the third week with like 35-minute to 45-minute super light runs. But for some people, your body's still recovering for 4, 6, 8, some people up to 10 or 12 weeks because of what you've just accomplished. And also the load of a 3 or 4 month training period, the mental fatigue of that, just by taking the time off, you're allowing yourself to then set yourself up to do it again and again and again. But without that downtime, I mean, I've been through it myself of just like burning out of, oh, my like soul hurts when I go for a run because you're so tired of sticking to the plan, and you just want to kind of have the freedom to run however little much or however little that you'd like to run.
What are some of the things that runners do? And runners are stubborn. I'm a runner too. I'm very stubborn. It's very hard to take time off. We want to just be able to do it because it's like, if you're a weightlifter, right? It's like, if you mess up your pec and you can't bench, like you can't bench, right? But like running is like, you could twist your ankle, you could get some plantar fasciitis, you could get some runner's knee, and you could still just, scratch and claw your way through some runs. So what are some of the, beneficial things that runners can do while nursing an injury that will, both help them recover from that, but also set them up for success and longevity?
The first and foremost, it's actually taking time off the road. I think, like you said, like we will all scratch and claw our ways through every injury and issue, and just being athletes as runners and athletes who are now turning to running. I think a lot of people just feel, oh, it hurts a little bit, but everyone has something like that, and then that little something becomes something bigger because they did scratch and claw. But I think that swimming, biking, whatever your body allows, depends on the injury, obviously. Walking on the treadmill, doing backwards walking, elliptical, like there's so many tools out there, and it's about, I think for a lot of people, it's about that endorphin high. And so when you lose that, you want to find it in other ways. And it's, for me, it could be as simple as going to the sauna and a cold plunge where you still kind of get that little bit of a high, and comes back down. And then all the time that you would be spending running, spending doing mobility work and even strength training, if you're not already doing that, spending some time or learning how to spend some time in the gym comfortably and knowing what you're doing without, starting to take the guesswork out of the extra stuff that we avoid when we're trying to get 7 days of running in.
Mm. Sam, I think this is a really cool opportunity for you and me to dive into like almost like a really practical um like build of a
Yeah.
program. So I know that you're a run coach, that you have helped, hundreds of runners, if not thousands, just, crush their goals, whether it be in a mile, a 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, ultra, whatever it is. Um, let's just if somebody comes to you and they say, Sam, I want to run a half marathon this year, and they give themselves like a 6-month time frame. Say it's January, they're like, all right, June, July, I'm gonna run a half marathon. They maybe dabbled in it for a specific period of time. We're just gonna come up with this like avatar, right? We're gonna come up with this
Yeah.
fake
Perfect.
avatar. Um, and we'll call them Cameron. Cameron comes to you and says, um, I want to run a half marathon in 6 months. What are you going to like? How are you going to structure that in terms of like everything? Like, how would you go about that in terms of like from running to strength to nutrition? How are you going to progress them along throughout those 6 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the starting point for me is always your base pace, your base aerobic base fitness. So let's find out where Cameron is. Maybe we take the first month of just doing easy running, depending on, where they started. You start with 35, 45-minute easy runs. Let's see what's happening with your heart rate. Let's see what's happening with your cadence. See kind of how you're feeling at the pace that you're running. Are you conversational? Do you pretend that it's conversational, but you're actually running too fast all the time? So kind of establishing that for the first month is where I begin pretty much with every distance, depending on how much time I have to trade someone. And then we talk a lot about what their fuel is before they run, after they run, during their run, and starting with just the basics of eat before you run. And I have that conversation with many, many runners who I've been coaching for a very long time who still don't like to eat before they run because it's 5 a.m. and it takes too much time. So just establishing like, hey, we eat before every run. If it's 35 minutes or it's 2.5 hours, you're eating something. This is what that looks like. We want carbs, we want salts. We want to make sure that you're hydrated. We want to make sure that if it is over 75 to 90 minutes, that you're also carrying fluid with you. So we establish all of that groundwork first and foremost. And maybe we would be doing 3 or 4 days a week of running, those easy runs, base building. If they're a little bit more advanced, you can go 5 to 7. But if it's someone new, who I'm assuming this is a newer situation in terms of preparing for their first half, perhaps, I would also start to incorporate maybe 2 days a week of strength training, where it's a lot of single leg work, a lot of body weight work, a lot of finding out what your body needs, what feels good for it. Um, I've had runners that have never stepped foot in the gym before and then have, they start running and that's where they kind of get their high, they get injured, and then they introduce the gym later on. But if you, in an ideal scenario, if you can introduce it early, it becomes your habit. It becomes part of what the process is. I know even for me dealing with this current injury, I spent more hours in the gym in the past 6 weeks than I have over the past 4 years, just because it was like so dialed in. And if I can maintain even 2 or 3 days of that during my next cycle, like that's kind of ideal. So just kind of educating on the structure of how much we need to build your base, how long that takes to get there, knowing when we start adding in those speed work days, hill sessions, quality sessions is what they're kind of listed as, but doing 2 or 3 of those in a given week, maybe 2 of those, and then 1 with a targeted long run, and starting to build up month by month. So the first month, maybe we just have 2 quality sessions of some light speed to find out, can you actually control your pace? And then we start to add some, hey, I want you to reach a little bit for this, but I want you to be in control of your pace. And then lots of hill work to start to develop some power and speed without the impact of doing track work or speed work on the road. And then the long runs, that's again, we have aerobic base. We just build those up over time. And then we start introducing some of the speed work or speed play into the long runs. And really that pattern goes through the race. So if we take 1 month to build, month 2 to start to introduce it, month 3, we add a little bit more of it. And then we get really targeted on what is their threshold pace or their tempo pace, what kind of work is going to benefit them to reach whatever their goal may be. And if it's just to finish, this would look a little different. It doesn't have to be so dialed in, but if there's a goal pace that they're trying to reach, I want to expose them to that early and I want to expose it to them often.
Okay. I want to circle back to something there just out of sheer curiosity for me, because I've gotten a lot of connected with a lot of people in the running space, a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes. I'm curious about the eat before you run, because I do think that this is something it's a hot topic. There's a lot of people
Totally.
talking about, should you eat before you run? Should you not eat before you run? Obviously, if you are going to have something, I think we can all agree that carbohydrates, less fiber, more salt, like those are going to be your best bets. I am just curious, yeah, because I've had like a lot of some of the best. I think it's more so the people in the ultra space who are not as much. They're very big on like developing metabolic flexibility, getting your crossover point of when you start burning carbohydrates for fuel, glycogen for fuel versus when you're burning fat for fuel. So is there a benefit to one or the other? Do you almost have to earn the right to run fasted, or I would love to just have you dive a little deeper on this.
I mean, I've certainly done fasted running. I've had athletes do fasted running, but I know that when I'm fueled, and this is all personal experience, I recover faster because my glycogen stores are never emptying. Someone kind of described this to me once as like 3 buckets. And if that third bucket starts to drop, you start pulling from the other 2 buckets. But if you top that off before you run, those 3 buckets and they're kind of overflowing, you never get into a place where you're struggling for energy or fuel or bonking. Obviously, for 35 minutes, sure, you can go out with no food in your system and get it done. But then your recovery, when you get home, it's all about getting the carbs back in, getting the protein back in, starting to refuel. So you're just starting the process. The process is it goes all the time, 24 hours a day. So it's not like when you sleep and you wake up, you start at 0. Whatever you've had the night before, sure, that rolls over. But we want your glycogen stores to be topped off as much as they can so that you're not searching for fuel along the way. And what I find, I think a lot happens with intermittent fasting, and that's obviously a fad, but it's kind of here to stay. I think a lot of people find that it's beneficial for them. But for me, it just isn't something that I would ever suggest for someone, because I've seen too many people bonk, hit walls. They'll go out for an easy run and have major stomach issues because there's nothing in it and they're dehydrated. And so there's a variety of ways that you can mitigate the stomach stuff by carrying fluid with you or having at least electrolytes to break your fast. But I think it's my personal opinion that you should not be running on empty ever if you can avoid it. I get in the ultra space, it's so different because you're eating along the way. And so you can do that. You could do any of this stuff fasted and not eat a thing. I did a marathon during the pandemic and didn't have a gel or a water with me, which cool, great. And do you know how long it took me to recover from that? You know what I mean?
Probably
It's like
probably very long.
it's very dangerous to put yourself in that position. And even looking back, I'm like, man, that was crazy of me. Imagine how I would have performed if I actually fueled throughout that, if I actually had some water with me. And, I was 4 years younger then, so I could get away with it. And it is, the older that you get, you just learn from your own mistakes or the mistakes of others. And going out with nothing in your system for a 2-hour long run or a 3-hour long run, and then feeling great after, you feel light, you feel lean, you've sweated it all out. Now you've got this replenishment of all the calories you burned, all the work that you just did, and then the stuff to actually recover from that.
Yeah, that's a lot of food.
Yeah.
That's a lot of food. So yeah, so I think this is a really cool point right here that that I just want to stay on for a little bit, and that's I think there's a difference between performance and general like health and longevity
Definitely.
for somebody who is like a little bit overweight and they're running because one, they enjoy it. Because one, I'll say like if you're trying to lose weight, like you don't have to run. Like there's other ways, like you can do cardio in other forms, like you said, swimming or biking or rowing or skier or walking, whatever else it is, because building muscle also is going to help you continue to burn more fat, from what I know as well. But do you see a difference between somebody who comes to you and is working with you and is like, hey, I've got 15 pounds I want to lose versus I don't give a damn about anything besides, hitting my PR or, like getting on the podium of this race or whatever else it is. Like, is there a difference there?
I still would want them to eat before their run, regardless. And the thing about like when you're doing this for weight loss or general fitness and well-being, as you said, it still matters how you perform. So you can just be a runner. I sometimes envy the runners that can just do it intermittently and like not be so tied to a plan or a goal, because it's a little bit freeing. But you should still eat before you run. And if it is for weight loss, it's more about calories. I mean, the science is the science, and if you're burning more than you're taking in, you're going to lose weight. And so I think from that regard, I wouldn't treat their performance on a day in, day out basis any different. And it's the same for people that I train in the gym, like people that I'm training to put size on versus people that I'm training to lose weight, or they're training for a specific event. Like we're still approaching it the same way because at the end of the day, like you need fuel to perform. If you under fuel, you're not going to be able to perform as well, or you're risking feeling really shitty during that performance, whether that's on the road, in the gym, or otherwise. And I mean, it feels like counterintuitive, like, oh, if I don't eat, I'll lose weight while I run. And it's dangerous, it's risky, and it's really not the way to lose weight.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. There's Nutrition's one of those things where I think, you talk to 100 different people, you'll get 100 different answers. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree, especially for like the longevity aspect of it. Like some of the people I've talked to, like Zach Bitter or Jeff Browning or Mike McKnight, like these guys are winning 100, setting world records, like winning 200-mile races. Like they've put in the time, they've developed like the metabolic flexibility. And again, like the long ultra runs are very, you know, it's not what everybody else is doing. Not all
Definitely.
of us are gonna have access to, beautiful mountains out in Utah that you can just go run on every day. It's like, no, you're gonna be out there pounding pavement, just trying to do the damn thing in the 10K half marathon or marathon. So I think that's really helpful to clear up. What are some of your pre and post workout running go-tos in terms of nutrition?
I am a believer in the scratch hydration products. I drink those almost every single morning before a run or before a workout or during the day. They also have carbs in them. So that's like a first thing I try to get in my system if I'm running first thing in the morning. Obviously, sourdough toast, peanut butter, honey, banana, the same old thing that everyone on Instagram and social media posts because it works. I like that. I do Trader Joe's peanut butter filled peanuts. There are pretzels are very good. So carbs, fat, quick, easy on the go. And then post workout is always something with protein, whether that's eggs, a protein shake. I'll do like glutamine to help with recovery. So I typically make the same shake, and then maybe an hour later I'll have a meal if I'm just doing a shake. But it's always protein first, some sort of carb, maybe make something on the stove if I have time to do it, but if I'm on the go, a shake will have to do.
Okay, that makes sense. I am a big believer in, post workout carbs and protein, especially if you can get it somewhere quick. I love doing a shake with like banana, strawberries or blueberries, maybe some honey, and then getting, some protein powder in there, maybe a little Greek yogurt. For me, that like having like a 2-to-1 ratio, is what I
Yep.
learned. So getting like, 50 to 60 grams of carbs to 25 to 30 grams of protein right away is great. And then honestly, having something more like whole food based, like dense, like a little bit after that too. So some more
Yep.
protein, like eggs and maybe some sourdough toast or sweet potato or something like that. Yeah, I think that's great. I am curious, what was the injury that you're currently dealing with, and what are some of the ways that you've been addressing that?
So I strained my hamstring last October. And I ended up running through it, ran a half marathon, ran CIM, managed a PR out of it, which is awesome.
Not
But
bad.
during that time, my sciatic nerve was getting caught somewhere along the line. So I was getting pain from my glute all the way down to my foot. And so I think I just was changing my gait so much that I ended up with bilateral tendinosis in both hamstrings. And then I ended up tearing the left hamstring, which is the original one that I strained. And I learned from my MRI that I also have a torn labrum, which is very common in runners. And it doesn't give me pain, but it's definitely part of the change in gait.
Really,
And
a
so
torn labrum in your shoulder?
no, in my hip.
Oh, right.
You have
Okay.
labrums in your hips also.
That's right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Good to
The
clarify. Good to clarify.
exercise science for idiots over here.
Yeah, so that's that I was expecting that I had like a fractured hip. I was having all this pain and it really was just radiating through the sciatic nerve. And so once we kind of freed that up, then I could just feel that it was hamstring related. And so I had to kind of limit anything that was going to upset my hamstring. So I took time off my feet, stop. I was deadlifting a lot at the time too. And I never really noticed it during it. But if I would run or do a sprint, it always would flare up. And it wouldn't be like, oh, this is a little bit painful. It was like, oh, this is going to rip off of my bone if I don't actually address this. And so that was, I guess, 6 or 7 weeks now that I stopped, and I just was spending all my time in the gym. I got clearance after like 3 weeks to do the elliptical and backwards walking. I was spending a lot of time walking outside. But for the most part, just back to like building a strong core, starting to do upper body work, a lot of like half kneeling stuff to stabilize my pelvis, which I think all runners should be doing if they're doing anything in the gym. A lot of single leg, just balance work, stuff that's missing. And I recently, took matters into my own hands and got a new gait analysis to kind of see what's going on. And I have like some major avoidance patterns from my left leg, the one that has a tear. And so now kind of trying to figure out how to manage that without taking more time or making it more risky.
So, what are the benefits from a gait analysis?
Tons. You can see all of your imbalances, the asymmetries, which most people are going to have some asymmetry. We're not symmetrical beings, so there will be something. But learning, even if you're a heel striker or you're a midfoot striker or you strike on the ball of your foot, and none of those things are wrong. It's just knowing how to best train outside of your running to make sure that you're protecting yourself from getting injured. So, because I'm a heel striker, I overload my hips, my hamstrings, my glutes, and that's kind of where the injuries always happen. Whereas if I was a forefoot or a midfoot striker, my calves would be doing a lot more work. And my calves are rarely, rarely sore from when I'm running. So now it's kind of, okay, let's redevelop how we access and use our calves because they're not doing enough of the work. And so just from my gait analysis, learning like, okay, this is what I can adjust. That's the first step of let's strengthen your feet, start to get your calves more involved without changing my gait necessarily, because by changing it, it kind of does put me at risk of creating more injury. But by actually owning it and saying, okay, this is how it feels good for me, how can I make sure that I don't get injured in that position?
So, if somebody wanted to go get a gait analysis, where can they get that done?
A lot of physical therapy offices or running specific physical therapy offices will offer it. There's several places in New York City that do it. I mean, it's a quick Google search, and you want to find someone who has a reputation for doing such. For the most part, the technology does give you all the data that you need, but you need someone who accurately knows how to read it and kind of make next step choices of what do we do from here.
Gotcha. What is your take on strength training for runners? How often do you program it for your runners or recommend that they do it?
I recommend everyone does it 2 to 3 times a week. Obviously, with the marathon builds, that tends to be the first thing that people forget to do or tend to kind of let fall to the wayside. So I would say 2 to 3 times. If you can only manage two and it's 20 minutes at a shot, that's more than nothing. And I would be very specific about how you spend your time in the gym. If you like to be in the gym and you like to do it for aesthetic reasons and you want to do lots of other things that don't really affect your running, have at it and spend time there. But 20 to 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week is kind of the gold standard of at least getting in there and moving in a different way to protect you for all the mileage that you're putting on the road.
Okay. And for somebody, those 2 sessions, is it one upper body, one lower body? Is it a full body on both of them? Is it just lower body? Like how would you go about that?
I would go about full body both days or all 3 days, however much time you have. I'm never going to avoid one area to prioritize something else. It's your upper body is a huge part of running. So to split that up into ways would, I guess you could do it that way if you're spending more time and you want to do upper and lower splits. But with all my clients, I do full body each and every time, unless there's, something that we're working around or an injury or something that's bothering them, then maybe we'll spend more time doing mobility on one part of the body and strength lifting, however you want to look at that on the other part.
Have you always worked in health and wellness, or how did you become how did you get to this point in your life?
I studied exercise science in college. I started going to the gym when I was like 13. I played every sport under the sun. I played 5 varsity sports in high school. And I just think I kind of knew from an early age that this is the direction I was going to take. And then in college, studying exercise science, I took a course that was preparing me for my CSCS, which was a really cool opportunity to really learn how to apply strength and conditioning into college athletics is most specifically why it's the gold standard. That's who it's typically used for, or professional athletes. And then I really leaned into that, but I did a lot of CrossFit. I was a CrossFit coach for a while. I taught yoga for a while. I just kind of dabbled in each direction to kind of figure out what felt best. And then I worked at this company called Puri. It's a fish oil, vitamin D, magnesium supplement company based out of Copenhagen. And they came to the United States by way of CrossFit. Like they were sponsoring athletes. And I really loved that side of things. So I worked with them for a while. Um, did not like it when they put me at a desk. And I started taking SoulCycle classes in San Francisco, auditioned to be an instructor. And I did that for 8 years. All the while I was still running and training using the bike, thankfully, for a lot of my training, which was very helpful to have a career that allowed that. And then when the pandemic hit, I really leaned into running, started the run club, started teaching a lot of my former clients or soul cycle riders how to get into running safely, how to train for something. We had, I think, 30 people that ran a half marathon when there was no races happening. So that was like a really cool moment of, oh, this can be something. And then all the while I've been doing virtual or remote training for strength and conditioning or personal training.
Got it. Okay. Amazing. I love that story of how you're just following your passion, following what lights you on fire, and just capitalizing on opportunity, because there's this crazy boom right now in terms of like people just running their first race or running their first marathon. Like I just feel like we're in this crazy running boom that, being in the health and wellness space for the past few years, really only the past, probably, I guess, 8 or 9 months has just been like amazing seeing like everybody from all different niches of like fitness and wellness just making running a part of their lifestyle. And a big question that I get a lot too is like, how do you, stay motivated and like not hate running, because it is really hard to get going and stay consistent with it, right? So for you, what is it about running that really just fuels your fire, that really lights your flame?
It's really just my outlet in terms of whether I'm having a good day or a bad day or whatever that looks like. It's always the same. It's like this one constant outlet of, okay, you lace your shoes up, you get out the door, and like everything else kind of goes away, or you can deal with everything that you're thinking about or worried about or working on. and having that like alone time, like I'm very much, I run first thing in the morning and then I spend the rest of my day down at the gym. And so for me, it's like, if I don't set that time aside for myself, then how am I going to show up for everybody else kind of situation? And I think a lot of people feel the same about running. It's this accomplishment that I can do for myself no matter how I'm feeling, that once it's done, it's, I'm lifted up, I'm excited, I'm happy to get to the next thing, and I've already taken care of what needed to be done or the box that I like to check off in order to start my day.
Besides maybe overtraining, is there a specific experience or time that you could go back on and label as like your favorite failure, or just a big mistake that you can't do anything about besides just look back on and laugh?
Yeah, the first time I really went for a time at New York City, I think it was 2019. I really wanted to break 3:30, and I did all of my training runs at a 3:30 pace. And on race day, I think I ran 10 miles at the 3:30 pace and completely like bonked out a little bit at mile 11 and had to like really fight to come back to it and finished in 3:31, which was a heartbreaker. And that's not the first time it happened, and it's not the last time that it happened, but I really learned from that about slowing down. And I think that everyone has to learn the lesson at some point or another. And that's the first time I learned it. And then you kind of, oh, but it's not that fast. I guess my heart rate's staying pretty low. Like you start to read into the data of, oh no, I'm fit enough to do this. And then you learn on race day that maybe you or overestimating where your fitness level was because you didn't take the time to properly build.
What would be an optimal build? Like if you say, like, let's go for somebody trying to set their PR, maybe they're trying to run a 3:30 and they come to you and they got 12 weeks until the NYC marathon, right? Like, what is that build going to look like? And I think that's relevant right now because I'm sure somebody listening to this right now is probably running the NYC marathon and it's in like, I don't know, close to like, I think
Less than 12.
less than 12, but like, let's
Yeah.
just say, 12. Let's just say you got a
Yeah.
marathon at 12, you're trying to set a PR. What's that build going to look like?
Weekly long runs are going to build progressively. I like to do a long run. Perhaps I'd have to write it out to see the numbers, but if we're at 16 miles, I want to do 16 miles easy. And then the next week, I want to do 16 miles with some at marathon pace. And then we'll go to 18 and then 18 at marathon pace so that you expose yourself to what that looks like. And then you expose yourself to the marathon pace in that same distance. So it's going to take a little less time. And then every fourth week, maybe taking a little bit of a lighter load, whether that is volume altogether, and we drop a couple miles on the week, or we take the long run and make it into 2 runs, or just we're going to change something in that fourth week to allow you to recover a little bit while you're still training. The volume during the week is going to be 80% easy runs. It's going to be a lot of time of easy volume, easy time on your feet. And it doesn't matter what PR you're chasing, as long as when you finish your run, you're not completely gassed, you're still capable of doing the rest of your stuff. Like I think I had to learn this lesson because as a coach and as a runner myself, like I'm very competitive. I'm very into following the program, sticking to it. But like life happens and sometimes you can't fit in, 6 runs in a week and you have to pick which runs you prioritize. So for most people, I have them running 4 or 5 days a week, especially the newer runners or first time marathoners, so as not to overtrain them or overdevelop too soon. So it's really about getting those easy miles in, especially if we have 12 weeks, that's a bit of a time crunch in terms of endurance. But getting the easy runs in, and then I would do 2 quality sessions a week. Because of New York City being as hilly as it is, I probably have them doing 1 hill session a week or at least every other week to expose them to some of that, whether it's on the course or in Central Park or things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the long run aspect is something that I've been really interested in just because I think a lot of coaches have different philosophies and just my own experience having done like one training block where like my first marathon, it was really like my long runs didn't have a ton of speed work in them. And I think I was just getting a lot of benefits from building a strong aerobic base. But then the second marathon prep that I did where I was going for a faster time that did have, like intervals and more speed work built into them. And you mentioned like doing 16 easy at like a zone 2 pace and then 16 with a few at marathon pace. Is it going to alternate every week? Like you're doing a really hard like interval session during the long run and then the next week you're doing a long run that's easy, or how is that going to go back and forth?
Not every week, but it could go where we do 16, expose you to 16 miles. And then the next week we do something with 3 by 2 miles at pace with a 1 mile jog recovery. And maybe even some pickups, 1 minute pickups at the end of the run, something to that nature. But um, the reason that you want to include marathon pace is you got to know what it feels like. And you want to know what it feels like from start to finish. So I want to know what it feels like at mile 4, and I want to know what it feels like at mile 16, and I want to know what it feels like at mile 20 before I show up on race day and expose myself to it. I ran a marathon in 2021, and it was the first one that I like followed a program for, and I had a coach for, and it was my first time really overextending myself because my pace was meant to be 6:56, and every run I ran at 6:40. So every workout that my marathon pace was 6:56, I ran at 6:40. And so I didn't actually know what 6:56 felt like. I started the race at 6:40 and I quickly learned like, oh, I can do that for 4 miles, but I can't do that for 26 miles. And so it's that exposure of what does it feel like on tired legs? What does the turnover feel like? What does your upper body feel like? What changes about you when you drop into that pace? And I think when you have goals and you're trying to chase something, you got to know it inside and out. And that's where my philosophy really about exposing you to it often is it comes from. I want you to know exactly what it looks like, exactly what it feels like. And I want you to let's see what your heart rate looks like. Are you recovering when you take time off? If we have a walking recovery, how quickly does your heart rate get back down? How quickly does it climb back up? When does it climb back up? What's your breathing like? So there's all these like little data points that you can assess on yourself without needing someone to guide you, but having someone have a look at that really helps in terms of no, these are the facts and this is what we can improve on.
Yeah, no, I love that. What are some signs of, potentially overtraining? Like I know for me, it was like just feeling tired and fatigued and not necessarily injured, but like I was just telling myself that this is just how it is, as a runner, like you're gonna feel tired, you're gonna feel exhausted, like just wanted to take a nap at the end of every day. So is that normal? And if that's something that somebody's maybe going through right now, what are some of the tactics that you would implement to make sure that that's not happening?
I wouldn't say it's normal by standards of like proper training. I would say it's probably likely that you're overtraining. Sometimes fatigue happens. I'm tired. I get up early, run first thing in the morning, have a busy day. Like I go to bed very early, embarrassingly early, but I do it because I really like to do what I do. And so what I have found when I'm overtraining, it's I have no appetite, and that's a problem. Like when it's gotten that far that like I don't want to eat because I'm just like so out of it. Or like I said earlier, like my soul hurts. My soul it feels drained and unhappy and I'm dragging to go do this. Like I love to run. There's not a day where you're gonna ask me to go for a run where I don't want to do it unless I'm overtrained, in which case it's like, oh, I really don't want to do this. And it's kind of the same thing like you had asked about taking time off. Like some of the best runners in the world take a month off after their marathon because of how hard they're training up until that point. So if they're taking that much time off, how much does someone who has a full-time job, maybe has kids, maybe has other stuff going on, who also like isn't chasing prize money or a place in this race, how are they going to feel? So um I think when you first start to feel that burnout sensation of this isn't fun, this is an obligation, like take a day off, change some things up, change your route, change what you're doing. I know there's this world of like stay hard, David Goggins. I know tons of people that are like really on that. And I get it. I think it's cool that there's people that are gonna do whatever they want to do, like whatever their goal is, they're going to do it no matter what. But at the end of the day, like your health matters more than all of it. And like you have learned that very firsthand, like things change and you have to prioritize the things that are going to matter if that race wasn't happening.
Mm. If it wasn't running for you, what would it be? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a very good question. Something outdoors. I mean, that's a really hard thing to navigate because when I couldn't have it, I went right to the gym and I am totally a gym junkie. I mean, I've loved being in the gym for a long time and running kind of takes that away from me in a sense. So I think maybe some type of like hiking, I could see myself getting super into that. Like there's so many beautiful places in upstate New York or Pennsylvania that I could get into. From a career standpoint, I really have no idea. Like I have put all my eggs in the basket of fitness and health, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So, what is something that excites you right now? I mean, you're still competing. I know it's been a little bit of a tough stretch for you, and then you have a bunch of clients that you're coaching. What's one thing that really excites you moving forward?
I am excited to watch people cross their first finish line, like people that I've been coaching. You get to have like really cool relationships and learn about people. And even if it's not all of my coaching is remote, like a lot of it is via text message of just hearing their kids are sick and they got sick and they can't make this run and how should we go about it, and it's like, oh, tell me about your kids, and you get to start to like have these other relationships, and then you get to see them win whether they make their time or not, when they cross the finish line and like all of that paid off. That's the whole point of it. I mean, that excites me every year, and because it's marathon season, it's like I'm going to get a chance to go out to Chicago to see, I have 7 or 8 runners out there, so that'll be really cool to be there in person. I'm going to fun run New York City and I have a ton of runners running that race. So like to be able to be on the course with them is really exciting to me. And then really, I think kind of dipping my toes into this ultra world next spring is going to be really fun. So a lot of that stuff, obviously, it's all running related, but that's really what hypes me up and gets me excited. And you asked about, how do you keep the motivation for it? And it's like, because what else would I do? Like that's where I want to be. That's the thing that I love to do.
I love that so much. It's like, regardless of, you know, all the external circumstances, like what your parents want to tell you to do, or what your friends and family are doing, or, what people on social media are doing, is like, if you just follow your gut, follow your heart, follow your intuition, that is never going to steer you wrong. Yeah, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be crossroads. There's going to be, a whole bunch of things that may go wrong. But I love your mindset of just taking it one step at a time. Nice running analogy there, but just following what really lights you up. And I really admire that about you. I admire that about your content. And I know that that's why, so many athletes are just thriving under your guidance. I'm curious, what does the next chapter look like for you as an athlete yourself?
I really need to break 3 hours in the marathon. I've gotten too close. And once I
What's the
did that,
PR? What's the PR?
3 hours and 49 seconds.
Oh my gosh,
Now wait till you
no.
hear this. This is when I had my hamstring tear in December. I gave myself 10-second walking breaks after mile 20 because I was in so much pain. And I walked for 50 seconds and I ran 3 hours and 49 seconds. I was still
Oh
thrilled. It was still
my
a
gosh.
great PR. It was still wonderful, but man, it was heartbreaking. And I know it's there. It's just, it's going to be a long build to get back there.
What is going to be the strategy?
I think I'm actually going to take a very different approach this time, because I did lose a lot of strength by not spending as much time in the gym. When I did my gait analysis, I did a force plate analysis to find my strength and power and like lots of data, very cool stuff. I'm abnormally strong and powerful, which is great. I've been spending a lot of time in the gym. I've above average strength. That's awesome. But my stretch shortening cycle, which is very important in running, is very, very limited. So I am not quick enough off the ground. I had a foot surgery back in 2021. And so that's kind of limited a lot of this gait issue, or created a lot of this gait issue that I'm having and where the injuries are coming from. So I'm going to address all of those things first. And the biggest thing for me that's going to change is that I'm slowing my easy runs down even slower than they have been, to build a base that like allows me to go for a very long time. So depending on when I decide to go after sub 3 again, like that could be after the 50 miler. I want to have the anaerobic base that's strong enough that you can ask me tomorrow to run a marathon and I'm ready to go, and um mentally, I think I'm there. I think I'm a little bit of a sicko in that way, like many of us are once we kind of dive into this. Like I'm willing to go for it all, but I want to do it in a manner that is healthy, it's safe, it's not going to leave me on the couch for 2 weeks after because I overdid it.
Well, depending on how this recovery goes from my heart, maybe you and I will be trying to hit sub 3 around the same time, because that's something that I'm definitely gonna go back
But
to
we will
try to hit.
cross our bucket list together
You
as
know
long
it.
as we have a doctor signed approval, we will go for it together.
Yes, that's 100% a fact. Sam, I love it. I am so grateful for you and this conversation, and that we were able to, just chop it up and just bring, hopefully, a ton of value to people. I got a ton of value out of this. So when I return to running, I'm definitely going to refer back to this and all the gems that you dropped. But for you, I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests, and that is, when you hear the words pure ambition, what does that mean to you, and how does it apply to your daily life?
That's a very good question that I did not prepare an answer for, despite having listened to previous answers. I think it's just a commitment to myself, to doing what I say I'm going to do, being impeccable with my word, really standing up for what I believe in, listening to my gut, kind of what you said, but it's really about the commitment to myself, and that can change on a given day, but being really honest with what that looks like and going for it. I'm happy that I learned that at a young age, that I can have the things that I want if I work really hard for them, and staying true to that, and really committing to that for the entirety of my life is kind of the goal.
I love it. Sam, thank you so much for everything today. If people want to connect with you, learn more about your coaching, where can they connect with you? Where are you hanging out?
At sam.scaffidi on Instagram, at Project Sweat Run Club on Instagram, and I am only on Instagram because everything else is too difficult for me to navigate.
Fair enough. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you. Looking forward to
Thank you
doing this
so
again
much.
sometime.
This was great.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I wanted to give you all a heads up too that I launched a free community on the Upspace app where you can join, ask me questions, connect with like-minded individuals, follow my 4-week running and strength training program that has some dedicated mobility sessions in there as well, so that we can all optimize our health and fitness together. So if you're interested, head over to the App Store, download the Upspace app, and join the Pure Ambition community today. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.